where it was the DJs cutting breaks back and forth, embracing funk tracks, whether it's you know, using like Rufus Thomas, you know, push and pull, you know, you know, that is the DJ taking that beat going back and forth, and then that was, I think, what made me and Beastie Boys as a band made us kind of want to dig further and see what was going on with funk.
So your introduction was sort of you heard DJs at clubs playing records, and then you sort of like went backwards to like, what is that the root of it?
Yeah, I think, well, I heard DJs at clubs mixing in classic funk breaks, and then also underneath MCs, you know, cutting records back and forth. And so, yeah, that made me wonder, okay, you hear the track, it's incredible. What was that?
It's interesting too, because you guys, you got punk roots, and your first album was, as I remember, the samples I remember were more rock. The obvious ones that I remember. Paul's Boutique, though, it feels like that's when you guys went through a transition, and a lot more your sample base was funk or a jazz funk or whatever. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like the mission statement when we made License Sale, it was like, okay, we had tape loops going around the studio, and it was, to us, it was one of the things we learned actually really from, I think, Africa Bambaataa was the great, was the originator of the form of, you know, you go see Bam at Roxy, and he would play funk breaks, but he'd also play rock breaks. You know, Bam was colorblind as you could possibly be in terms of he would mix up, you know, he'd have Tony Basil going with Led Zeppelin, going with James Brown, going with Sly and the Family Stone, going with Mano Dibango, you know, and so on and so on and so on. So he truly mixed it all up and made it all work into Roxy, when Roxy at this time, when it was hardcore b-boy, you know, I was one of 6, if there were 6 white people in that club, I was one of the 6. Anyway, then later on with Paul's Boutique, when we hooked up with the Dust Brothers, I think part of the mission was, you know, we had all these funk records that we loved, there were so many, whether it's Sly, and just that whole influence. And then with the Dust Brothers, we had this technology of sampling, so it was kind of combining that all together. And then I think it was even later, then when we got to making Check Your Head, that we had this idea of, all right, well, what if we started playing instruments? But it was kind of, that was very much like any band, like we were inspired by all these records that we've been digging through and buying, looking for samples. You know, we kind of wanted to sound like these great studio bands. Not that we could ever become them, but we, you know, in our own way, we wanted to sound like the Meters or the Bar-Kays or, you know, or the MGs. It's like, I mean, even though those are the greatest studio session funk bands in the world, but there was an element where we wanted to kind of do something like that.
Well, one of my favorite records by you guys is Root Down. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, that you guys became in your own right a funk band. Would you say that was, to some degree?
I say we try, you know, it's like anything. It's like there were elements in trying to do what we tried to do, to a certain degree we probably failed and came up with our own thing.
Right.
But that's how a lot of good music gets made.
So when you look at hip hop, then, you know, for a lot of people today, hip hop is then the child of funk. It's the cousin of funk. What is the relationship of hip hop to funk?
Hip hop is like the the unwanted stepchild to funk, because I think, you know, hip hop needed funk, because funk is this grimy, aggressive, rude. You know, it has this rude quality, this raw quality to hip hop. You know, I think some of the still, you know, whether it's hip hop, whether it's Wu-Tang Clan or you know, Run DMC, when you first heard Sucker MCs, when you heard there's this raw energy that I think you also hear. You know, I think actually the Public Enemy, JB's kind of those two parallels are a great example, because when you hear Fight the Power, it's this incredible, powerful, raw song. And, you know, when you hear like when you hear the Grunt by JB's, that's this incredible raw funk thing, you know. So I think with Bomb Squad they did a great job of kind of like harnessing that funk energy and kind of reinvigorating and putting that into this very focused onslaught with Chuck D as the kind of the political and social force, you know, the front person leading that, and then with Flavor kind of animating it all, it all worked.